Today we are going to be looking at a crime that most would think can only be dreamt as part of a script from a horror movie. This crime could have been ripped straight from the movie screen of Silence of the Lambs. Katarznya Zowada was a 23-year-old college student from Krakow, Poland. She attended Jagiellonian University where she initially studied psychology, but like many students, changed a couple of times and finally settled on getting her degree in religion. She was a quiet young woman who kept to herself, and those who knew her said she was nice, but at times would withdraw from others and appeared to be sad. According to those who spent time with her, she missed a few classes and stopped being as social late in October and into November of 1998, which led many of them to believe that she was seeing a man that she had not told anyone about. Katarznya had been dealing with a bout of depression that was brought about after the death of her father in 1996. Katarznya was going to therapy to specifically deal with her ongoing depression in 1998. And it was on November 12th that her mother was alerted that something might not be right. Her mother would go with her to her therapy appointments, but on this day in November, Katarznya did not meet with her mother or go to her therapist appointment. According to several Polish news outlets, once Katarznya was a no-show for her meeting with her mother and a no-show for her meeting with her therapist, her mother went to the local police station and reported that her daughter was missing. The police told her that it was too early to report her missing and that she was probably just doing her own thing and didn't show up like many university students do. Unfortunately, Katarznya was not just skipping her appointment, and she was truly missing. Any person who is a fan of horror or thriller movies has seen Silence of the Lambs. No one would think that novelist Thomas Harris would pen a story where parts would play out in the real world. As most know, the story plays out with Buffalo Bill removing the skins from his victim so that he can make a female form for him to wear. Sadly, this is where our real-world disappearance of Katarznya draws parallels from the novel and movie. On January 7th, 1999, the captain of the barge tugboat Elk was in the waters of the Vistula River and noticed an issue with the propeller on the boat. As the captain and crew removed the hatch and began to work on getting the propeller functioning properly, they suspected a tire or some other debris that had jammed the propeller many times before. Shockingly, as the captain and crew began to repair the issue, they were overwhelmed with a terrible smell. But nothing prepared them for the horror when they saw a human ear connected to the material. DNA testing confirmed that the sailors had just discovered the skin of Katarznya Zowada. The forensics team from the police estimated that the skin had been in the river for approximately 2 weeks. A week later, her right leg would be found in the river, and these are the only parts of Katarznya that have ever been found. As we move along in the story, it is important to remember that the Polish police and media do not release people's full names. So from this point forward, we will only be giving people's first names and initials to their last names when speaking about potential suspects. The police began investigating immediately. They believed that this was going to be the work of a serial killer, and a few months later, that thought was believed to be confirmed. The investigators received a lead from an older gentleman regarding his grandson. His grandson's name was Vladimir W., and he was a twisted individual. When the police went to the man's home to investigate, they found a beheaded, skinned man hanging from the rafters of the grandfather's basement. Vladimir W. lived in a home with his father and grandfather. The grandfather had noticed the odd behavior of Vladimir and the rare presence of his actual son. The reason his son was only making scant appearances was as perverted and twisted as your mind can imagine. The body in the basement was Vladimir's father, and Vladimir had been wearing the skin from his father's face and his clothes around his grandfather to trick him at times. The grandfather had very poor eyesight, so did not know. When asked why he had done this, Vladimir said that he was angry with his father and it was his way of getting revenge for him cheating on and leaving his mother. So the police had 2 cases of murder where skin had been removed in both. They have Katarzyna's killer, right? Apparently not. The evidence that the police had gathered did not match with Vladimir W. being her killer, so the case went cold, and it stayed cold for quite a long time. In 2012, a new special task force was formed, and they had the few remains of Katarzyna exhumed. A special 3D rendering was made of her body, and advancements in DNA and toxicology science opened the case up with new hope of catching her killer. The task force reached out to outside specialists and organizations such as the FBI for help. With the outside help, a profile was created of the suspect. The profile stated that the offender was sadistic and someone who others would consider a harmless freak. Another interesting aspect from the profile stated that due to the damage of her skin, that the perpetrator would likely have training in martial arts. Several more years passed by, and the police continued to gather evidence and search the river, where they would find clues such as small pieces of clothing and more DNA evidence. Then in October of 2017, the police finally made an arrest. Almost 19 years after the horrific and tragic crime, they arrested 52-year-old Robert J. He had been on the list of early suspects for the police, and one of Robert's colleagues had even written the police a letter suspecting him. Robert J. had worked in a lab where they would dissect human cadavers. Then he had a job working at the Krakow Institute of Zoology, but he was fired from there after he killed all the rabbits while he was on shift. Interestingly, like the profile said, Robert was also trained in martial arts. The police were able to bring an 800-page indictment against Robert J. The theory that was printed in Polish media stated that Katarzyna went to meet with Robert one evening, and they left going to a cottage outside of the city. Once there, Robert imprisoned her and then tortured her, where it is believed that he beat her with a blunt object, performed martial arts kicks, and forced her to consume cocktails of chemicals. There is even a possibility that she was still alive when he began removing her skin. There has not been much information released internationally on this case, and we have had long stretches with no information at all. It is believed that Robert J. has yet to stand trial. Sometimes it is shocking how much life can imitate art. The similarities between the crimes of Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs and the tragic way in which Katarzyna lost her life are undeniable. It is vital to reflect and remember that a young woman lost her life in the most horrific of circumstances, and there is no justice in the world that can balance the scales in this story. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed one of the darker and less talked about crimes on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and share. We will be releasing 2 videos a week, so we look forward to you joining us for the next one. Thank you.